The forest had been silent for years, until one night, a weak radio signal started pulsing from deep inside it, and it was coming from a cabin that burned down long ago. I was part of the county's search and rescue team in northern Montana. Winters here are long, cold, and cruel. The kind that make the woods feel alive, breathing, shifting, listening. We don't get many emergency calls during that season. So when the radio picked up a faint distress signal late one Friday night, we assumed it was interference. It wasn't. The signal came in short bursts, a standard SOS code, repeating every few minutes. It was weak, distorted, but clear enough to trace. When we ran the coordinates, it pointed straight to a spot deep inside Black Hollow Forest. The name alone gave most people chills, because 10 years ago, an old ranger cabin, Cabin 9, had burned down there. The fire was ruled accidental. No one ever rebuilt. Still, protocol said we check it out. So, me and my partner Henry packed up the truck and drove out before dawn. The snow was still falling when we reached the forest edge. Our truck couldn't go farther, so we went in on foot. Radio, thermal camera, and emergency packs in tow. The woods were dead quiet. No birds, no wind, not even the sound of our own footsteps seemed to stick. Henry joked that the forest swallowed sound. I didn't laugh. As we got closer to the coordinates, the signal grew stronger, not clearer, just louder. The static almost felt alive, hissing through the receiver like breathing. And then for a few seconds, the sound changed. It wasn't Morse anymore. It was a voice, broken, weak, but human. Help me, please. We froze. I checked the frequency. It matched the emergency band exactly. No civilian should have access to it. That meant either a ranger or someone with stolen equipment. Could be a hiker? Henry whispered. But hikers don't carry distress beacons like that. When we reached the site, the forest opened up into a clearing. And there it was, Cabin 9. At least what was left of it. The walls were collapsed, roof caved in, everything blackened by old fire. But something didn't make sense. Fresh snow didn't settle on the cabin. It was like the ground around it was still warm. Henry noticed first. He crouched down, touched the soil, and looked at me. "It's warm," he muttered. "That's impossible," I said. He just stared, his breath fogging in the air. Then our radio crackled again. But this time, it wasn't the same SOS. It was a whisper, almost directly in our ears. "Cabin 9, don't come in." We both stepped back. Henry turned, scanning the trees with his flashlight. "Someone's screwing with us," he said, but there was no one there. We decided to log the site and return to base. But before leaving, I took one last look at the ruins. Something glinted under the debris. A metal box, half melted, but intact. When I pried it open, I found an old ranger's logbook, charred but legible. The last entry was dated November 13th, 2013, the night of the fire. "He's still here. I hear him in the radio every night." I tried turning it off, but it comes from the walls now. "If anyone finds this, don't answer the signal." I looked at Henry. "Do you think it's real?" He shrugged. "Maybe the old ranger lost it before the fire." We left it there and started heading back. But then the radio screamed. It wasn't static anymore. It was a recording. My voice. "Henry, do you think it's real?" He stopped dead. The voice repeated, echoing through the static, over and over. And then a new voice joined it, one that didn't belong to either of us. "Yes, it's real." We sprinted. Branches tore at our jackets. Snow blinded our path. The radio kept blasting until I threw it into the snow. Silence finally swallowed us. We didn't speak until we reached the truck. But the nightmare didn't end there. Back at the station, the dispatcher handed me a printed report. It was a follow-up on the old Cabin 9 incident. The ranger who died there. His name was Henry Lowe. I froze. My partner Henry leaned over my shoulder, reading it too. Then he looked at me, pale and shaking. "That's my name." I forced a laugh. "A coincidence, right?" He didn't answer. Later that night, I reviewed the GPS tracker from our trip. According to the device, we never reached Cabin 9. The system showed us wandering in circles for 6 hours, never once near the clearing. But I saw it. I touched the cabin. I heard the signal, so I went back alone the next morning. I needed to see it again to prove to myself it was real. When I reached the coordinates, there was nothing. No ruins, no clearing, just trees, snow, and silence. But the moment I turned to leave, my radio came alive. Static hissed through the speaker. Then that same weak signal pulsed again. "Help. Me. Please." And beneath the voice, a faint echo of my own breathing. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept the radio off, but even in the silence, I could hear faint clicks and beeps, like someone tapping Morse code through the walls. I tried to decode it, but it never made sense. Just fragments. Until one night, the message came through clear as day. Cabin 9 isn't gone. Now, every winter, when the snow falls just right, I still hear it. That same faint SOS signal, cutting through the static. It always comes from the same spot, the same coordinates. Cabin 9. And sometimes, late at night, I hear Henry's voice calling back. But Henry doesn't work with us anymore. He went missing 3 years ago, during a solo rescue mission in Black Hollow Forest. Some places aren't forgotten by accident. Some are left off the map because they were never meant to be found again. I run a small travel channel online. It's not famous. Just a few thousand subscribers who like watching me explore hidden trails, ghost towns, and old campgrounds across the Midwest. It's a passion project, something to keep me sane after my divorce. One afternoon in late September, I got an anonymous message in my inbox. No greeting, no name, just a link to a file and 5 words. Find the Lost Pines Camp. Attached was a scan page from what looked like an old state park brochure, yellowed and faded. A small red circle marked an area deep inside the Ashwood Forest Reserve, a place I'd driven through dozens of times. But I had never heard of Lost Pines Campground. At first, I thought it was a prank. Still, curiosity got the better of me. So I loaded up my truck, packed my drone, camera gear, and a sleeping bag, and headed out that weekend. Ashwood was quiet. Too quiet. The deeper I drove, the weaker the cell signal got, until my GPS froze completely. By the time I reached the forest gate, the sun was already dipping behind the trees, and a heavy mist had begun to form. I parked near an old trailhead marked "Site Closed." No access beyond this point. Perfect, I thought. Exactly the kind of thing my viewers loved. I hiked for about an hour, following the faint markings of what used to be a road. And then, just as the last light began to fade, I saw it. A wooden sign half buried in moss, its letters barely legible. Lost Pines Campground, Esther 1968. Behind it stretched rows of cabins, half collapsed and overgrown with vines. Picnic tables covered in dirt and pine needles. Rusting fire pits still circled with stones. And everything, every tent, chair, and lantern looked like it had been left in a hurry. I set up my camera and began filming. The silence was thick, pressing against my ears. Even the forest seemed to be holding its breath. "Okay," I said into the mic, trying to sound calm. "This is eerie. Looks like everyone just got up and walked away." But then I noticed something strange. Near the largest cabin, a campfire was burning. Fresh, alive, crackling softly in the dusk. I froze. I hadn't passed anyone on the trail, and yet the fire burned clean. No smoke, no smell of fuel. I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer. I stepped closer, camera still recording. There were plates on the picnic table, 4 of them, each one with food half eaten. And the strangest part? It wasn't rotten. It looked fresh. I leaned down to look at one plate more closely, and that's when my camera glitched. Static flooded the screen, the audio warping into low, distorted whispers. I turned it off immediately, thinking maybe the cold had messed with it. But then I heard it. A voice, soft, right behind me. "Are you staying the night?" I spun around. No one. Just the trees swaying gently in the wind. I backed away, heart pounding, and decided to set up camp near the road instead of inside the site. That night, I couldn't sleep. The woods were alive with strange sounds, footsteps crunching through leaves, faint laughter echoing through the trees, and low hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. At one point, my tent zipper moved slightly, like something brushed against it from outside. But when I looked, there was nothing there. At 3:17 a.m., I woke to the sound of music. Faint, old-fashioned camp music. Children singing. It was coming from the direction of the campground. Against my better judgment, I grabbed my flashlight and followed the sound. When I reached the clearing again, the entire campground was lit. Lanterns glowing, campfire blazing, and people, dozens of them, sitting around, laughing, roasting marshmallows, playing guitar. They looked perfectly normal. Families, couples, kids. But when I tried to film them, my camera showed nothing. Just empty space. I lowered the camera slowly. They were still there to my eyes, but not to the lens. One of them, a woman in a blue flannel, noticed me. She smiled, raised her hand, and waved. Her voice floated through the air like smoke. "You made it back." I stepped closer, trembling. "Who are you people?" She tilted her head. "Campers?" Her smile widened, almost too wide. "You shouldn't have followed the signal." "What signal?" I asked. She pointed toward my backpack. My walkie-talkie, completely turned off, was blinking red, emitting faint static bursts. Beep, beep, beep. I tore it out and threw it into the fire. The laughter stopped instantly. Then, silence. Every camper turned toward me in unison. Their faces, blank now, eyes black like burnt wood, and the air turned cold enough to freeze my breath midair. "Time to check out," one of them whispered. I ran, through the trees, down the trail, not looking back once. I didn't stop until I reached the truck, gasping for breath. When I turned on the ignition, my phone lit up for the first time in hours. One new message, no number. "We saw you. Thanks for visiting Lost Pines Camp." When I uploaded the footage the next day, I expected corrupted files. But everything looked perfect. Except there were no cabins, no signs, no fire. Just me, standing alone in an empty clearing, talking to no one. The comments poured in. People thought it was fake. Some called it brilliant horror acting, but one comment stood out. "You found it too. Don't go back. They'll be waiting next time." I tried to track down the sender. Their account didn't exist anymore, but the coordinates they left on their profile led to a place I didn't expect. A field of trees and a small wooden sign sticking out of the ground. It read, "Lost Pines Campground. Closed after 1983 fire." And beneath it, a list of names. 32 campers, all presumed missing. The last name on the list? Mine. Pause. Now, whenever I check my old videos, there's one frame that never stays still. A single second of static. And in that flash, I can see them behind me, smiling through the trees. When the storm hit the valley, every signal died. Phones, power, even the ranger's radio. Except one. And it was broadcasting from a tower that shouldn't exist anymore. I've worked as a park ranger for 12 years, stationed across 3 states. I've seen storms tear through towns, floods wash out trails, and wildfires devour miles of land in hours. But the one thing that's always scared me most isn't nature. It's what the forest keeps buried. It happened during the last week of November, 5 years ago. We were hit by a winter storm that came out of nowhere. Winds howled through the canyons, trees snapped like bones, and power across the region went dead. I was assigned to monitor the north sector of Black Pine Ridge, an area miles from the nearest road, known mostly for abandoned cabins and old ranger posts. My only contact with base was a 2-way radio, old but reliable. That night, around 11:47 p.m., I was sitting by the fireplace, trying to stay awake, when the radio crackled to life. Ksh! "Anyone out there? This is Station 12. We need assistance." I frowned. Station 12 had been decommissioned years ago. I'd seen it myself, half collapsed, rotting, and empty. I pressed the button. "This is Ranger Collins. Identify yourself." Silence, then static, but just before it faded completely, I could have sworn I heard a woman whisper, "Don't let it find you." I tried the line again. No response. I assumed maybe someone was playing a prank, or a rogue signal had bounced through from an old frequency. But then I noticed something else. The radio light was still blinking, even after the message ended. It meant the channel was open. Someone was still transmitting. I switched to the backup frequency. Same thing. Channel open, faint static hum, no human sound. And then, barely audible through the hiss, came breathing. Slow, heavy, too close to the mic. The next morning, I decided to hike up toward the ridge and check out the old Station 12 ruins. The snow was knee-deep, and the air so cold it burned my lungs. Every few minutes, I'd stop to listen. The forest was dead silent, except for the faint buzz in my earpiece. That same static, constant and steady, like it was following me. After 3 hours, I reached the clearing. The ruins were still there, crumbling, frost-covered and empty, except for one thing that didn't belong. The old radio tower. It was standing straight and tall, cables humming with faint energy, its lights flickering red. That tower had been dismantled a decade ago. I'd seen the report myself. I stepped closer, crunching over the ice. And then, my radio came alive again. Station 12 to base. Survivor located. The voice was clearer this time. A man's voice. Calm, slow, familiar. It took me a moment to realize it was my own. I froze. "Who is this?" The voice repeated the exact words I'd just said. Half a second, delayed. "Who is this?" Then static. I backed away, heart pounding. Every instinct told me to leave, but part of me, curious, stupid, needed to know more. I looked up at the tower. The top light blinked 3 times, then stopped. And when I turned back to the cabin, I saw footprints in the snow. Fresh ones, leading straight into the forest. And they weren't mine. I followed them. The prints led down a narrow slope deeper into the woods, ending at a frozen creek. There, tangled in the roots of a fallen pine, was a radio, old, rusted, but still powered. Its antenna twitched, releasing bursts of static that echoed faintly through the trees. I lifted it to my ear. "Help me?" The voice was weak, trembling. "Who is this?" I asked, but all I heard in reply was my own voice, repeating the question back. Then a whisper. "Turn around?" I did. And for the briefest moment, I saw someone standing across the creek. A ranger, same uniform as mine, same badge, same face. I stumbled backward, dropping the radio. When I looked up again, he was gone. The woods was silent, except for the faint hum of the tower in the distance. I radioed for extraction, but no signal went through. It was as if the air itself was jamming me. I had no choice but to wait until morning. That night, I stayed inside the ruins of Station 12. The air was heavy with smoke and frost. Around 2 a.m., I heard static again. This time coming not from my radio, but from outside. Like the forest itself was whispering, and then came footsteps, slow, measured, approaching the door. I held my flashlight up. The door creaked open. And standing there was the other me. He looked identical. Same jacket, same patch, same scar above the eyebrow. But his eyes were black. Not pitch black like shadows, just empty. He stepped closer. "You answered the wrong signal," he said, his voice blending with static. "What do you want?" I whispered. "To take your shift." I don't remember what happened after that. When I woke up, it was daylight. My radio was gone. The tower, gone too. Just a clearing of untouched snow. I hiked back to base, half frozen, half out of my mind. They said I'd been gone 3 days. But to me, it felt like one long night. When they found my radio miles away, it was still transmitting, playing back fragments of voices, old emergency calls, overlapping, distorted. And at the end of each loop, mine. Station 12 to base. Survivor located. They closed the Black Pine sector after that. Too many strange readings. Too many disappearances. The official report listed it as unstable terrain. But I know what I heard, what I saw. Now, every time a storm rolls in, I still turn on the radio. And sometimes, through the static, I hear breathing again. Then a faint voice, whispering softly, "Your shift's not over yet." Pause. The strange part, every time I check my reflection in the cabin window, I swear the man staring back isn't me.